Welcome back to the Fulfilled Female Entrepreneur Podcast. It's your host, Cassandra Rosa. I'm a certified coach and healer and intuitive business coach, and the mission behind all that I do is to help you to create a fulfilling life and business. Today, I'm so excited to be speaking with Emma O'Brien. She will be talking about emotional resilience in business. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I'm so excited to have Emma on today. We actually recorded an episode on her podcast that we're going to leave in the show notes as well. It's been so beautiful to connect the couple times that we have chatted, and it's so beautiful, the power of podcasting, because we are connecting from Canada and from South Africa today. So it's such a powerful thing, being the internet, that you can connect with beautiful people all over the world. And I want to start off by thanking you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for your patience. For anybody who's listening, we've had a bit of a couple of false starts with my dogs appearing with squeaky toys. So we'll set the intention for better behavior to happen in my end here.
I'm a dog owner as well, so I get it. And they love making their cameos in recordings, that's for sure. But I'm excited to introduce you all to Emma. She's a certified Heartmath coach and Martha Beck Wayford trained life coach. She blends compassionate, intuitive, and practical coaching skills with her extensive expertise in helping her clients shift their mindset and change their lives for the better. She helps folks get unstuck, recover from life's burnout, overcome overwhelm, and reignite their passion and purpose. Alongside her coaching practice, Emma brings 2 decades of entrepreneurial expertise to the table. She's an award-winning dog photographer, and having run successful photography studios in both the UK and South Africa, she adapted in helping her clients with small businesses, marketing, and strategy. She hosts the Lemons and Pineapples podcast, a weekly show where she shares life hacks, coaching tools, and inspiring, insightful guest interviews. We're going to link all the ways for you to connect with her in the show notes or in the description of this video. And I just love your varying different types of expertise, when it comes to your intuitive side. You have the photography, you have the marketing, you have the sales. I think that that's so special and unique to what it is that you do. And we have that shared love for dogs. So knowing that you're a dog photographer is extra special too.
Yeah, and I think it's come from reflecting as I've been working on my coaching business. I think, and this is a really important thing to talk about, is often we tend to focus on what we can't do yet or need to learn to do, and we don't actually reflect on the skill set we've got. I mean, I've grappled a little bit with, I don't have a degree. And sometimes it can be easy to make yourself feel inferior because I don't have a degree. But actually, I've got a hell of a lot of experience of running a business. I've got coaching training, and I've got a lot of life experience that I bring to the work I do. And having run 2 successful photography businesses, there's a lot of things I've learned along the way. And it's about blending our skill set. So I think for anybody listening, it's so important to take time to reflect on what you're good at and really where your strengths are. So if that I hope I inspire you to do that with this conversation today.
Yes, I love that. You're already sharing powerful messages off the get-go. And this podcast is all about fulfillment. So I love to ask all my guests what fulfillment means to you and what's the most fulfilling part of your work.
So fulfillment for me is being able to do work that I enjoy, to be able to wake up each day and know that I'm doing something that feels good to me and also is adding value to my clients. It's adding value to the collective, if you like, without getting too kind of off the wall about it. And knowing that I feel good each day. And we're going to talk about the business side of things and the bit of the work I do. But it took me a while to get to this point of being focused on making sure I went after work that's fulfilling. I spent a lot of my photography career, the first decade of my photography career, just doing work to make money. And we all know we need to make money. We have bills to pay. It's really important. But I think so is being fulfilled. We have this one shot at life on earth, and I don't want to waste it. And I think a lot of people get stuck in a trap of doing work they don't like because they feel like that's the only option available for them, and they're miserable. And I think it's important to find your happy, and to do, even if it's not your work you do, even if it's something outside of work you do, is finding something that fulfills you. And what I enjoy about the two pieces of work that I do with the photography, it's really great for me to be able to deliver pictures for people of their dogs, and often their dogs are important members of their family, so it's doing work that adds value. And with the coaching work, it's helping people transform their lives from where they are, which when people work with me, they're often stuck, fed up, and spinning their wheels, to actually getting on track and creating a life that they enjoy.
I love that. I love how you spoke into that whole piece of contributing to the collective. Because I think us standing into our purposes, creating more fulfillment in our lives, it creates a ripple effect for the world. So
Yeah.
I really love how you touched upon that in your definition, and how you focused on, yes, it's valuable for them, but then it's also great for me, and it makes life more enjoyable as well. Do you want to speak a little bit to your journey of how, maybe where you started being in that photography job, doing things for money, and then how you made the shift into a more fulfilling path for yourself?
Yeah, and I think, like a lot of people who end up in a space of coaching, it comes from learning from your own experience and wanting to help other people either avoid your own experience or get out of it as quickly as possible. And I started a photography business in my early 20s, and I kind of just fell into doing whatever it was to earn money, because I was just thrilled to be being paid for photography. And I started out, I'd wanted to be a documentary photographer, but as a career move, that's kind of not really something you can just wander into and start making money. And I needed to make some money, so I ended up doing wedding photography. And for a while, it was enjoyable being paid to do something I liked. And then I got myself really busy. I had no strategy in place for my business, and I just got more and more and more clients, because I think often we can fall into the trap of busy equals success, which isn't necessarily true, unless you're very
Right.
profitable. And I wasn't very profitable. And I did that for a while, and then I relocated to South Africa, and I restarted a business, and effectively I used the exact same business model for it. And I got myself to a stage again of being so busy and burnt out, I actually started to hate what I was doing. And as someone who's creative, and I started a business out of a love of taking pictures, to get to the point where I just thought, actually, I hate this, I knew I had to shift something. And it was about getting in touch with, what do I really want to be doing? How do I want to be running this business in a way that works better for me, that's not 7 days a week, 10 hours a day? And it was my own episode of, when I just had a complete episode of burnout. And it was that made me rethink what I was doing, and actually what I wanted out of my business, as opposed to just being a slave to my business, which I think is a trap a lot of people can very easily fall into, especially as solopreneurs. Is you start a business because you think it's going to give you the freedom to do what you want, and all of a sudden you don't have any free time. You are literally just working to keep this little machine you've created going. And I think that's when people wake up and go, what am I doing?
I think burnout is such a gift for that, for a lot of people, in which you can have that time to check in with yourself and reevaluate and realign.
I agree with you. And that's the first time I've heard burnout referred to as a gift. And I think you're right, is if you look back on it, it can show up as a gift. At the time, I think the last thing it feels like is a gift. It's like my life literally fell apart. And I think that's
Right.
what happens for a lot of people with burnout. And it's a very unpleasant place to be. And I think that, for me, is what inspires me with my coaching work, is to be able to help people who are running. I do life coaching and I do small business coaching. Is people with small businesses, you look at it and and I can see what's going on. And people say to me, I'm up till 3 o'clock in the morning doing admin. And I think, having got myself out of it, it's very easy for me to help people with a strategy to quite quickly free up time, so that you don't end up completely in a complete hole of burnout. Often it's just about delegating. It's about looking at how you're using your time, and being strategic. And as small business owners, you don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm. Totally. I can see how, having those inward kind of reflection and being able to adjust and just see what is this flow that is going to be more aligned for you going forward is something so powerful and so potent. And how, after that moment of burnout, did you start to incorporate practices to build emotional resilience? And how do you feel like that's helped you to build more consistency and avoid another case of burnout in this new stage of your business?
Yeah, so I think at the time when I had burnout, emotional resilience was a phrase that I was like, what the hell is that? And actually, the definition of emotional resilience
Mhm.
is your ability to cope in the face of stressful things happening and recover from stressful things. You can never get rid of external stressors if you're running a business, if you're a human existing. They're always going to be there. But emotional resilience is about knowing you have the skill set to cope with what life throws at you and not be totally derailed by it every time you get an email from someone that's unpleasant, or every time somebody lets you down. It's about being able to cope with that. So I think quite inadvertently, if I look at before I actually learned some emotional resilience tools in the Heartmath training, is looking at my time and managing my time better so I wasn't completely stressed with too much to do. When we overload our time and we're overwhelmed, it leads to it diminishes our ability to cope because we're tired and we're overwrought. So it's about having a look at what stresses that I have every day can I reduce. So, and the other thing is making sure you're looking after yourself and you're getting enough sleep. You're doing some sort of exercise. Exercise is really important in order to be able to process out the cortisol that we end up having in our bodies from these stresses. So there's lots of practical things, making sure you're getting enough sleep, making sure you're eating properly, so you're actually nourishing your body, you're not filling it with junk. There's a lot of science out there now and a lot of research out there now about the relationship what we eat has with our mental health. And it's simple things like shifting diet can make you feel better and help you be more emotionally resilient. There are so many pieces to this. The bit that I work on with clients is the Heartmath, which is essentially a set of emotional regulation training tools that I teach clients to do. And they're tools that you do on a daily basis to be able to help yourself be in a more positive mindset more of the time. When we're in a feel good space and we're in a positive state of mind and body, we think better, we function better, we cope better. And it's very simple. So those are the things that I would work on, and I do work on with clients, is training yourself. Emotional resilience is something you can train yourself to have, but it's like all self-development work. It takes a bit of time and it takes a bit of dedication to getting it done. There's not one set of tools that you can do one time. Cool, I'm more emotionally resilient. It's ongoing work.
Yes. Yes, I think you've shared so many key things here that I want to unpack deeper with you. You were talking about, your schedule, right? Having that all set out so that you're not overworking yourself, you're not filling your plate so much, leading to stress. Removing the external stressors, I think that's really important because if you have the same things triggering you over and over and
Yeah.
over, and you're not being able to deal with them, that can fill up your plate. I love how you're talking about the connection with food and how that's connected to your emotional well-being. I think that that's something that's not often talked about, and the science behind it I think is super important for people because it really enforces this whole concept of like the mind body connection and how it all intertwines together, how it's a very holistic system when it comes to that. And then this whole concept of heart math and training yourself to build emotional resilience. So let's unpack this a little bit deeper. I know how you were talking about how you experienced burnout and how that was something that, led to a lot of emotional things. And being someone that has also experienced burnout and, being the Energizer Bunny when starting the business as a solo entrepreneur and go, go, go and experiencing burnout, I can know how much of an emotional experience that can be. So, in terms of, like the time management, or as an entrepreneur, being able to have that balance so that you feel emotionally regulated, what are some things that you did to make your schedule feel aligned for you?
So I think the first thing was actually having a look at what was I spending my time doing. So doing a time inventory is the first thing for someone who's overwrought, who's massively stressed. And I think the phrase that's often used is I just don't have time. I do that, but I don't have time. Is to actually have a look at what are you doing with your time? Because often you might find if you're very stressed and overwhelmed, you're spending 2 hours a day scrolling on your phone, literally as an escape from the way you're feeling and as a distraction.
Mm.
And of course, what happens when we procrastinate is the workload expands, the overwhelm builds, and it's a cycle that just gets worse and worse. So it's having a look, firstly, where is your time going? And then it's looking at what are the things that you are doing that either you could just stop doing or you could get somebody else to do for you. So for me, this was a big game changer of hiring an assistant just for a couple of hours a week to help me with things like client deliveries and having a look at where could I get somebody else
Mhm.
doing a lot of the running around that I was doing. That immediately freed up quite a bit of time. The other big piece that's so relevant for entrepreneurs here is having a look at your pricing. Because if you're a service-based business, you only have so many hours that you can actually work and sell. And the big thing I did was overhaul how I was pricing my photography work. And I literally doubled my prices. And that was terrifying. But in
Mm.
doing that, I halved my workload. And I actually was making more money because I'd actually looked at my cost of doing business and set some financial goals and applied a bit more strategy to it. And that made a big shift. So I wasn't so busy all the time. And so I think there were a few things in there for people to look at. And like I say, often when you start a business, you end up getting so caught up in what's happening that you don't take time to step back and say, is this really worth my time, this thing that I've committed to doing?
Yeah.
Can I say no to this? And I think that's another thing that's difficult for people is setting boundaries around time as well. And saying to people, sorry, you don't get to call me after 5 p.m. And I'm also not
Mhm.
saying no to work that doesn't align, saying no to work that there isn't time to do. And I know that's easier said than done because I have been in a space where I had to take every job that came because I didn't have the luxury with money and savings to be able to turn work down. And it took me a while to get to a point where I had to find enough of a financial buffer to be able to start being a bit more picky about work. So for people who are
Mhm.
listening and are just thinking, yeah, that's really great, but I've got rent to pay and I can't afford to do that, is could you put a little bit of money away a month to be your financial buffer so that in 6 months' time, you know you're going to be in a position where you can start to pick and choose a little bit more. And these aren't changes that can necessarily happen overnight. They're changes that have to be implemented over a period of time. So you also need to give yourself a bit of grace as well when you're making changes in your business.
Right. Very powerful stuff. I think that I wish that I heard this episode, when I was going through my burnout, because I think these are such practical ways of being able to uncover it all. And outsourcing is super key. I've done that in my business and it's helped exponentially. And doing that inventory, I think, is a beautiful small way to start and seeing what is it that, you need to focus your time on, and what are those gaps, and then being able to evaluate the way your pricing is. I think that that's such a powerful message. And then when it comes to stressors, right, having those stressors, those triggers that happen over and over and over again, what are ways that people become more aware of the biggest things that are stressing them, and how can they start to make the adjustments accordingly with that awareness?
Yeah, and that's a great question. I think part of it starts with understanding what it feels like not to be stressed, so that you then become aware of when you
Mhm.
are being triggered and you are stressed. And I think for people who are stuck in burnout, you can relate, I can relate. When you are so burnt out and overwhelmed, you actually don't know what it feels like not to be stressed. So this is where something like the Heartmath comes into play, which is tools that teach you to calm your nervous system down so you can understand what it feels like not to be in a stress response. So it's, and that might be meditation, it might be Heartmath, it might be something else, it might be going for a walk, whatever it is for you, that you can get into a state where you understand what your neutral is. When we know what our neutral is, we can start to
Mm.
observe when we're triggered. And then when you observe what it feels like to be triggered, you can
Yes.
start to look at, what about this situation just triggered me? And then when we know what starts to trigger us, we can start to have a look. Do these triggers have something in common? And when they do, you can then start to have a look at, well, what is it in me that is being triggered by these things happening? That's when the mindset work comes in. That's when the inner work comes in. That's when the work of looking at, what beliefs am I running here that this interaction
Mhm.
is stepping on. And that's where the real work happens. Because when
Yeah.
our triggers, if we can be objective about them, which is easier said than done, can be our greatest teachers, because we can start to have a look at, actually, I'm triggered an awful lot by 50% of the work that I'm doing. Maybe I don't want to be doing that anymore. What could I do instead? And then you can have a look at, well,
Mm.
what lights me up? What do I really enjoy? To come back to your initial question and the topic of the podcast, which is fulfillment, is where could I do more of the fulfilling stuff? But until we understand what we don't want, it's difficult to go after what we do want.
Yes, I love that response to that question, how you're starting it, kind of reverse engineering it in the way of getting yourself into a state of neutrality and knowing that what that feels like. So that way you can uncover and become aware of, these are the triggers, these are the patterns that are coming up over and over again. So I love how you highlighted that. Throughout the course of this episode, you've been speaking about Heartmath. And I know in the bio, I had introduced you of, you have this experience with Heartmath. So, first of all, what is Heartmath, and what are your favorite Heartmath tools to help people build emotional resilience?
So Heartmath essentially is, it was a scientific, well, it is a scientific research that's happened about looking at our heart's innate intelligence. And these guys who at the Heartmath Institute started to have a look at, what role does the heart play in our nervous system and nervous system regulation, and what role does the heart play in our brain activity? And they discovered that our hearts have around 40,000 neurons, which is a similar amount that some of our areas in our brains have. So essentially, our heart has its own thinking capacity. And they did the research, and the heart actually sends a lot of information to the brain, as well as vice versa. When we can tap into our heart's innate intelligence, and by that, we are able to adjust our heart rate variability. We're able to slow the heart rate down. We then start to slow our sympathetic nervous system responses down, which that's our fight or flight response, which then once that's activated tends to kick our amygdala off. And then we start going into, oh my God, where are all the threats? And we get into that real negative bias, which leads to stress. So it's that, in a nutshell, is Heartmath, and it's measuring that. The other great thing about Heartmath that they discovered was that our hearts have an electromagnetic field, and that field radiates about 3 feet out around our bodies. So essentially what's going on internally for us is actually hanging outside. So we are then influencing other people with our what's happening in our nervous systems and vice versa. So this makes a lot of sense when you start to think about if you've met somebody and you've thought, oh my goodness, this person has got such a lovely energy and they're really open and I really want to connect with this person. And also people that you meet that you think, whoa, gonna stay away from that. And that's we're not wearing our hearts on our sleeves. We're wearing our hearts as a kind of, an external outfit really that's happening around us. So when we learn to be able to control what's happening internally with some of the Heartmath tools, which I'll talk about a little bit more, we're able to regulate that nervous system better. When our nervous systems are calmer, we're able to think more clearly. We can make better decisions. We can listen to people more effectively. We can communicate more effectively. And then, of course, our lives improve. So there are a set of tools in the Heartmath suite. One of them, the most basic one, is heart-focused breathing, which is literally you slow your breathing down. So you breathe in for a count of 5, out for a count of 5. And whilst you're doing that, you focus on the area around your heart and you imagine that you're breathing in and out of that area. Simple as that. And it's a tool that for someone who's starting Heartmath, you can do it for 2 to 3 minutes, 3 times a day. You can do it when you're driving in your car. You can do it whilst you're sitting at your desk. You don't need to go off somewhere specially and do it. Heartmath do have a biofeed. Well, they've got a couple of biofeedback devices that you can get if you're curious about this, because then you can start to see in real time how what's happening in your body and internally actually is reflected in your heart rate variability, which is really very, very interesting. The one thing they talk about is coherence. So it's about learning to use the Heartmath tools to bring ourselves into mental and physical and emotional coherence. So essentially, once you've mastered the art of the heart-focused breathing, the Heartmath tools are about being able to get yourself into a positively energized state. So on demand, to be able to get into a state of gratitude. And we know when we're in a feeling of gratitude, we feel much better about life. We're able to be more optimistic. And it expands out from there. There's quite a few different other techniques that they build on each other. But once you tap your heart's innate intelligence and wisdom, you're able to live from a place of calm and from a place of gratitude and, dare I say it, happiness, which is life-changing. I found it's been game-changing for me in my interactions with people. Really, really powerful stuff.
Incredible. I love that simple tool of, using the breath work and really connecting to your heart, and applying gratitude. And it's so interesting to hear the science behind it. I think it's so fascinating just to see, how our heart's energy extends out 3 feet to us, and the amount of neurons, being connected to the brain, and that whole connection, I think, is really powerful. Is there any last emotional resilience tool that is used in the Heartmath suite that you want to highlight for helping people to build the emotional resilience?
I think the one thing that I have found with regularly practicing the Heartmath tools is the ability to be able to more compassionately communicate with people. Because when we're focused on, when we're in our neutral, let's say, and even better if you're in your positive state, we're actually able to read between the lines with what's happening with people. And I think for, we've been talking a lot about entrepreneurship, is when you're running a business and you're dealing with clients, sometimes it can be easy to read too much into something that's happening or miss something that's happening. And when we're more centered, we're able to actually really listen to what somebody is saying. And I think the hallmark of good customer service in business is being able to hear people and meet their needs, because that's all anybody wants, is to be seen and heard and have their needs met. And often when we're not doing that, that's when there's a disconnect and things perhaps go wrong. We have an unhappy client or something. So that's where I think that emotional resilience those tools are useful. The other place is when we're running a business, it's hard and things don't always go according to plan. Sometimes we fail, sometimes we fall down. And I think it's being able to have that resiliency to get back up again and say, all right, that didn't work. How can I do it differently? Is there another way I could approach this? Could I get somebody to help me? Is there an alternative strategy? Could I try something new? I think when we lack that resilience, we can often reflect it back to ourselves. What did I do wrong? What's wrong with me? Why am I a failure? And it's that shift in thinking around when things don't work according to plan.
Right, right. So if someone is feeling rejection or they're feeling like they're failing or their launch isn't going according to plan or all these things that are coming up in business, what is like the first way that they can start to connect with themselves emotionally to be able to move that energy and be able to eventually move forward? What is like your favorite tool to move through the emotions that come with rejection and unmet expectations?
I think it is literally getting back to just sitting quietly and removing distractions and sitting with yourself and just going, all right, what is coming up for me right now? What am I feeling? And what am I telling myself about what's happened? What am I making it mean that this didn't work? And I think in order to be able to move past something that hasn't gone right, it's to start to get in touch with how you've felt about it and process through the emotions that come up. Then you can get back to that place of neutrality, of being able to say, all right, this didn't work. I'm feeling angry about it. It's not fair. Maybe I should have done something else. Maybe I'm no good at this. All of these things will come up. And I think it's very useful to sit with it. And also another tool that's really great is to write it all down. So just brain dump it out. Because if it's out onto a piece of paper, it's not swirling around in your mind anymore. And it might be that you need to walk away from it for a day or so and just pull a gap from what's happened, especially if you're talking about like a launch that hasn't, if we use the example of a launch, if you've got really excited about launching something, you've put a load of effort into it, you've put a lot of money into it, and then you've put it out and it's crickets. It's soul destroying for something like that to happen. It's, for a small business owner, for any business owner, it's soul destroying for that to happen. And you actually have to take a bit of time to sit with the fact that you feel utterly defeated by it. And you might need to go and kind of just get through that and then go back to it. And when you are feeling calmer, and to start to have a look at it and go, all right, why didn't this work? And then from that place of calm centeredness, you're able to be more objective. Was my messaging off? Were my ads not set up properly? Am I offering something that actually I'm not packaging it up in a way that's appealing to people? And just having a look and just applying that reframe. But in order to be able to do that, we have to get out of the emotional intensity that's happened and be able to come at it again from a different mindset.
You've shared so many amazing tools today, so many amazing insights. I really love the way that you have gone deep in your responses with the questions. And I want to thank you for coming on. And before we wrap up today, where's the best way that they can connect with you to learn more about you, your coaching, and listen to your podcast?
So just like to say thank you for having me and giving me the space to share about the work I do. It's been a really lovely conversation. So people can find me on my website, which is Emma O'Brien Coach. And then you can connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok at Emma O'Brien Coach. And I have the podcast, which is the Lemons and Pineapples podcast, which is the link you're going to pop in the show notes because we've had you as a guest as well. So there's lots of ways people can connect with me. I've got a few freebies on the website. So there is, for anyone who's listening and the time management piece really resonated, I've got a free time management masterclass that you can access on the website as well. So that's got some really actionable, useful tools for people who are just like, oh my God, I don't have enough time. That'll help you.
Well, thank you again, Emma. This has been so amazing and insightful. Definitely go connect with her. Go check out the show notes or the link to this video to see all of the insights and way to connect with Emma. Thanks again.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you'll be notified every time I'll upload a new video on Thursday. See you in the next one. Bye.